In this episode, I want to raise awareness to a few great DevOps launch checklists. The idea here is these checklists give you a pretty solid foundation for things you should be thinking about when deploying workloads into the cloud. But I also wanted to point you to a few really useful documents around planning large launch events where you expect a massive influx of traffic. So let's dive in. If you're using AWS, Gruntwork has a pretty cool page called the Production Readiness Checklist. It's linked in the episode notes below. This page here is where they suggest a bunch of best practices for deploying workloads into AWS. The checklist has some really good topics too, like HA, CI/CD, monitoring, and cost optimization. Chances are you're not going to use everything here, but embedded in each area, there's lots of really helpful links for various AWS resources. So these checklists can be pretty useful for getting a lay of the land. The second thing I wanted to share was where you're planning for a large event where you expect a huge influx of traffic. Say, for example, you're a retail company and you're expecting a big amount of traffic over the holidays. How do you go about planning for something like that? Well, AWS published a guide on that, and it walks you through a bunch of best practices on infrastructure event readiness. Each year, most companies will typically go through something like this. Maybe there's a large marketing event, or you're launching a new product, or maybe you're selling a bunch of stuff over the holidays. We likely all deal with this from time to time, but just knowing these guides exist and how to get access to them can be pretty useful. So Google Cloud has pretty much the same thing. They have this launch checklist, and it walks you through a bunch of best practices for launching your applications on GCP. There's a bunch of overlap with the Gruntwork stuff too, as you likely care about the same things like HA, CI/CD, monitoring, cost optimization, etc. The reason why I wanted to share these links is that I've used them quite a bit, and it gives you a nice little framework for how to think and plan things like this. But I've been saving the best for last here. This Black Friday production readiness page is probably one of the best guides for planning a large-scale event where you expect a huge influx of traffic. The guide alone will probably take you about an hour to walk through, as it's very detailed and it gives you a step-by-step guide on what you need to do. Things like team communication, planning, load balancing, logging, monitoring, architecture diagrams, creating a game day war room, etc. What I like about this is it gives you sort of a peek under the covers of what large companies are doing when they launch things. For example, this is also what many online game studios go through when they launch something. They typically go from zero traffic to hundreds of thousands of active users within minutes. So you need to have a really good plan for making this a smooth launch. As I browse through this guide, I see a bunch of different episode ideas for things like load testing, capacity planning, looking for single points of failure within an architecture, etc. But for this episode, I really just wanted to highlight that these things exist if you need them. I honestly can't recommend the Black Friday production readiness page enough if you're going through something like this. You'll likely have to pick and choose what you want to implement because this is extremely detailed and there's a lot of process involved. So if you're, say, a startup or something, you likely want something a lot more lightweight, so you'll have to go through and pick and choose. I've actually used this guide multiple times when launching things. And honestly, things don't always go super smooth when you launch something, but you learn from it and then you can feed that into the next launch cycle. But my personal point of view is that having a guide like this really helps you do a lot of upfront work so things go smoothly on launch day. All right, that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Next week, we'll be checking out HashiCorp's Vault product, which should be pretty cool. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.